Happy Bank Holiday Monday, guys. Welcome back to a little holiday special here at Bareham Engines. So guys, as you can see, I'm dressed in non-school uniform. Look a little bit like a 12-year-old boy that's going out to play in the sun. I am due to be going with my family to Bideford Park to enjoy the day there in the sun. Bit different from yesterday, but I've just popped down here to give you guys a little video or something to watch if you're not doing anything today, being Bank Holiday Monday. Not sure what the weather's like where you are, but it is quite lovely down here. Right, first of all, guys, I've got to discuss something today. Let me get rid of this chewing gum, because otherwise I'm going to be having numerous comments on how horrible it is watching me eating. So there we go, that's gone. So first of all, the Rover coming on nicely. Isaac's just started to fit the VVC blanking kit. You can see the Sabre plate on the back there. So that's obviously doing away with all the VVC. You've got a plate here that fits on where the VVC unit would go. And that just does away with that. And then what we're fitting is 2 vernier pulleys, and I'm going to set the timing up as you would on any other engine, same as the Cosworth there. So yeah, it's looking really, really good, guys. Looking like a brand new, fresh. With the green there, as Isaac said, looks very techy, which I do have to agree with him. Looks trick that. Looking forward to seeing it all done with the old throttle bodies on, etc. Now, guys, the main reason for this video, I suppose this is a couple of things really. One, it is a lesson for you guys that are going to be building engines at home. And two, I suppose in a kind way, let's get our facts straight before we start sort of pointing fingers and stuff. The only reason I'm saying that, I've spoke to the actual owner of this vehicle. It is a Cosworth. This is a Cosworth 200 block. And we've had something to do with this a couple of times before now. I'll explain why. So I spoke to the customer. He's had to take the thing apart 3 times now. Fortunately, he's a really nice guy. But the only reason I'm putting this is because we have done some machining on this. Now, it's a difficult game with machining because obviously a lot of what we machine on these Cosy things, a bit like the long stud conversion, it's a modification, isn't it? It's outside of manufacturer's specs, obviously. You know, the manufacturers didn't produce this block thinking or taking into account that people might be drilling down into the base of the block. So yeah, it's all a bit of an after modification. It has been tried and tested and does work, but that's not to say you're going to run into problems. So this is what we have with a lot of these modification machining jobs. So the first time we did this, we did the 6 long studs. You know that I do tons and tons of those. Every 200 block that I build myself, I long stud now. Julian Godfrey supplied the studs, never really had a problem. Except the only problem we have had in the past, and this is a problem that the previous company that we used to use, that did the machining on these blocks, before I started doing them, did seem to have the same problem as well. And that's one of the reasons. I didn't believe it myself. They did tell me what could happen. So that's when I bought the tool and decided to do it myself. And having done it now for a few years, I do understand that the original company I use, and they still do it, they're still one of the most renowned for doing it. I do understand where they're coming from, and I know there is a problem with these things. So the problem is, down the base of the block, when you drill and tap, obviously you are drilling and tapping probably 4 or 5 inches down the block. So you've got to use a series of center drills, end mills and stuff to make sure that you get a good sort of starting base on the casting down here. But what is tending to happen on this one here, which is the front opposite one to the core plugs, more so on this one for some reason, there is a bit of a casting issue down here where you get a bit of a hard area, and you can usually see it visibly black. It is where you've got like a hard area in the casting probably where the casting finishes. Then right next to it is the soft cast iron. Now, as you can imagine, if you're drilling half hard, half soft, it's going to want to travel in, push from the hard into the soft. And that's exactly the problem we're having here. Now, when I did this block, I've actually had this problem about 4 times before, and I've rectified. 2 of them weren't too bad. One of them actually, I think, was for myself. but they weren't too bad. So what happens is it pushes it away and the stud's a little bit on the piss, very slightly. The two of them weren't that bad. Literally, it didn't make any difference. You could sort of just pull the stud over slightly and, you know, you've got to just do what you can. Never had it back, never been a problem. The other two, including this one, unfortunately, were really quite bad. So when you put the head on, they were probably half the hole out. It's probably about 5 or 10 mil by the time you get to the top threads out, which obviously isn't good enough. So on two of them, I have done a modification. So that would be this one here, which is, usually it's that one. The other three were actually that one, but in this case, it was this one. Now, I didn't have any studs at the time when they sent in this in for machining. They didn't send me a stud either, so I didn't have anything to try in. Usually, you can tell if you just screw it in, you can see whether it's at 90 degrees to the block face. I use a little angle gauge and you can just see it. But I didn't have any studs, so I couldn't test it. So they've had it back, went to build it, put the stud in, said it's right on the piss. So they sent it back, and what I do is I drill out slightly bigger and tap it. Then I make a cast iron bung, screw that in, and then that gives me a nice even hardness cast iron to drill and tap into to put my thread back in. Both of them that I've done, had no problem with. Now, this engine, the customer's built up, it's done about 500 miles, no problem at all with that particular one or the rest. But after 500 miles, it did start to blow a gasket. Now, obviously, he was still in the running in period, so they've removed the head, clearly blew a gasket around that stud, and it's actually ripped the threads of the stud out. Now, this is where obviously the customer's very frustrated. There's other people involved in this build, etc. And then there's us that's done the machining. I did notice on Facebook, and that's one of the reasons I'm putting this, because the customer rang me last week and said, I'm going to send it back, have a look, see if you can see any cause for the damage. If it's yourself, he said, that's fine. I said, listen, with our YouTube channel, with every one of our customers, we never try and hide anything. I said, you're more than welcome to put what you want on social media, but I will as well, and I do. I said, whether it was my fault, it would be on here. We would own up to it. If it's someone else's fault, we would, you know, we're not pointing any fingers or naming names, but we will say exactly what the problem is, and that's what I'm doing here. And the reason I'm doing that, or one of them, is because I seen on Facebook actually a week prior to us having this, somebody else had put on a Facebook Cosworth page this particular block, stating, is there anyone up the northeast that does long studding, because they've had this machine and a problem has come back with a block. I did read through the comments, and a few people had it was almost like they'd been chatting amongst each other, and you know, a couple of people said, well, it depends what machine shop you send it to, if you know what I mean. Obviously, because it's the second problem with this long stud job. The first problem, I'm absolutely fine with it. I would use this block myself on one of my builds, no problem at all. But I did say to him, look, that stud that's pulled out there, you can see they've marked it red, is one that's under the core plug. Now, I said, we always drill and tap those ones with the core plug there. Because they got the lug in the base of the block, we always go 5 mil deeper, which means they've got about another 4 or 5 threads in. So we've got about 12 or so threads in these two here. So this one here, this one over here, we've got about 12 threads in there. I said, listen, if those studs are put into the block correctly and it's all torqued up to within spec, there's no way that those studs are going to pull 12 threads out. It's just not going to happen. You know, we could almost put twice the head torque on those studs and they still wouldn't rip out. They've got about 4 or 5 threads more than the other ones. So I said, send it down. We will repair it, whether we put helicoil in or another insert. He didn't want to strip it, so he's left it complete. I said, well, if you don't strip it, I can't get it on the mill. The only way of us fixing that would be to put helicoil in, and I can do that by hand, not a problem. I've done it before. So that's what he wants to do. But I have had a look at it, guys, and I have found the reason. So let me just go and grab my torch. So when I was looking down there, obviously fortunately I can take those two core plugs out and I can see directly into there. And I said, what I'm suspecting has happened is sometimes, not just on these Cosies, but I've had it where these coated nuts and studs, if you don't grease them up properly, they can bind. They can sort of almost seize together, sort of temporarily. And if you're torquing it on an angle and it's trying to wind the stud in, that's obviously going to try and wind the stud into the base of the block, and it's going to put extra force on them threads and probably partially damage them. And that's probably what's done it. But I will be able to tell if that's happened, because you'll be able to see where the base of the stud has tried winding itself into the base of the block. So that's the first thing I wanted to look at, guys. So if we have a look down here, that there is one of the, if I put that down there, let's see, you can see, trying to get, you see the threads, look, we've got about 2 or 3 mil clearance where the clearance drill has gone, then you've got the threads and they go down right to the bottom. You've got about 12 threads in there. Now this one here, guys, there's no threads whatsoever in there, all ripped out, except for the bottom where there's about 5 threads. And I thought, and you're probably thinking that's a bit weird, but the reason for that is if you have a look there, look, see all that crap? Well, what that is swarf from where I've drilled it. Now, we do partially clean these blocks, but we leave it to the customer, whoever's building it, to clean it. And that swarf there has all come out of the base of the hole. So what I did was I put the drill down by hand, and obviously my drills are marked to the depth you need to go, which is on these two, 125 mil. And it basically went down to about 115 mil and was solid. So I got a drill and just literally, as soon as I touched it with the drill, it just pulled all this swarf up. Then you've got about 5 threads at the 5 or 6 threads at the bottom. So basically, whoever's fitted these hasn't blew that hole out. They've assumed that the compacted swarf there is the bottom of the thread, and they've just wound it in. Now, with the old style studs where you've got the 17 mil O-ring machined into the center of it, you would be able to tell whether you were completely down. But with these studs, you can go to whatever depth you want, and then you put a blue O-ring over the top that sits in this groove. So you can't really tell unless you were sort of looking at the top of the studs or put a straight edge over them. So yeah, so you basically, they've gone down to the swarf as far as they can go, and then which they've probably got about 7 threads in there, guys, and it's just pulled them out. So that is the problem. At least we've found it. I shall be obviously notifying the customer on Monday, but it's not one of those, it's not our fault, I'm going to do a video on it, really. It's just, you know, you need to make sure that the block is clean, guys. Don't get putting threads on or things on social media before you're absolutely sure. If you want to start pointing the blame, you know, we need to get to the bottom of it first. We do not mind if it is our fault, then we'll be the first to tell everyone. But yeah, that is obviously, it's a cleaning issue. I'm going to leave that there, take a few photos. And the only thing we can do in situ is to put helicoil in there. So we've got helicoils which are about 12 threads deep. I know a lot of you guys prefer time certs, but in this case, we find that helicoils are better. I can get all I'm going to have to do is open up the clearance hole at the top there, very slightly, which is not going to interfere with the blue O-ring job. Go down there, drill and tap it out a bit further, and stick a helicoil in, and away you go. It'll be absolutely fine, guys. So yeah, moral of the story, do make sure that your block is clean before you assemble it. Every single thread, that is. If it's had machining, guys, you cannot assume that that swarf has not gone absolutely everywhere and rammed itself into little holes where, to the point where you put something down there and it feels a bit like it's solid metal, but it isn't. So yeah, you must sort of run drills down and get the airline down, get the Hoover in there, and make sure it's thoroughly clean. But there we go, guys. I'm going to go now. My wife has actually just tried ringing me while I'm doing a video, so I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to go and enjoy my day. We will see you Wednesday with more updates on the Rover, I expect, and what the customers said on the Cosi. We've got a few more things that we are going to be going into, like the Land Rover. But have a lovely bank holiday Monday, guys, and we will see you Wednesday. Take it easy.